Dr. Aaron Foster gripped the steering wheel of his Mercedes, his knuckles white against the black leather. The steady hum of the engine and the soft classical music playing on the radio did little to calm his nerves. In the passenger seat, his wife Melissa lolled her head against the window, still groggy from the anesthesia. "How are you feeling, honey?" Aaron asked, forcing a smile as he glanced at her. Melissa's response was a mumble of words, her eyes unfocused. Aaron chuckled softly, remembering countless patients in similar states after wisdom tooth extractions. But this was different. This was Melissa, his wife of 15 years, the mother of his children, or so he thought. The light turned red, and Aaron eased the car to a stop. He reached over to adjust Melissa's seatbelt, making sure she was secure. As his hand brushed her shoulder, Melissa's eyes snapped open, suddenly alert. "You're an idiot," she slurred, her voice loud and harsh in the quiet car. Aaron blinked, startled. "What?" "I've been cheating on you from the day we married," Melissa continued, her words becoming clearer. "Also, the kids are not even yours. They're from my ex-lovers. I don't even love you." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Aaron's breath caught in his throat, his mind reeling from the sudden onslaught of information. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Melissa wasn't done. "You're so stupid," she giggled, the sound grating against Aaron's ears. "So trusting." It was easy. Too easy. The light turned green, but Aaron didn't move. Cars behind him began to honk. With shaking hands, he pulled over to the side of the road, his heart pounding in his chest. "Melissa," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "What are you saying?" But Melissa had slumped back against the window, her eyes closed once more. The anesthesia had pulled her back under, leaving Aaron alone with the echoes of her confession. For a long moment, Aaron sat there, frozen. Then, with trembling fingers, he reached for his phone. He opened the voice recorder app and hit record, just as Melissa stirred again. "I never loved you," she murmured, her voice soft but clear. "Not once. Not ever." Aaron felt something break inside him. 15 years of marriage. 2 children. Countless memories, now tainted by the poison of her words. He wanted to scream, to shake her awake and demand answers, to drive the car into oncoming traffic and end it all. Instead, he took a deep breath. Then another. His hand steadied on the wheel as he pulled back onto the road, his mind racing. If what Melissa said was true, and God, he prayed it wasn't, then he needed proof. Real, solid evidence, not just the ramblings of a woman under the influence of anesthesia. As they drove home in silence, Aaron began to plan. He would gather evidence. He would find out the truth, and then he would decide what to do next. The house loomed before them, a beautiful 2-story colonial that had once felt like a dream come true. Now it felt like a mausoleum, housing the corpse of his marriage. Aaron helped Melissa inside, tucking her into bed with gentle care that made his heart ache. How could she not love him? How could it all have been a lie? As Melissa drifted off to sleep, Aaron retreated to his home office. He sank into his leather chair, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. With shaking hands, he played back the recording on his phone. Melissa's words, harsh and cruel, filled the room. Aaron closed his eyes, letting the pain wash over him. Then, slowly, he opened his eyes. There was work to be done, a truth to be uncovered, and Aaron Foster was nothing if not thorough. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Hello. Yes, I need to hire a private investigator. It's about my wife." The next few weeks passed in a blur for Aaron. On the surface, life continued as normal. He went to work at his dental practice, smiled at his patients, and came home to his family. But beneath the facade, a storm was brewing. Melissa seemed to have no memory of her post-anesthesia confession. She went about her days as if nothing had changed, kissing Aaron goodbye in the mornings and chatting about the kids' activities over dinner. Each smile, each casual touch, felt like a knife twisting in Aaron's gut, but he played his part perfectly. If Melissa noticed the tension in his shoulders or the darkness in his eyes, she said nothing. Meanwhile, the private investigator Aaron had hired, a no-nonsense woman named Sarah, was hard at work. Her updates came in encrypted emails. Each one was another blow to Aaron's crumbling world. Subject M observed entering Flex Fitness at 2:15 p.m., remained for 90 minutes, left with a male, identified as Chris Parker, owner of gym chain. Financial records show regular payments to Flex Fitness for personal training sessions. Frequency and amount suggest services beyond standard gym membership. Surveillance photos attached. Subject M and CP in intimate embrace outside local hotel. Aaron pored over each piece of evidence, his heart breaking anew with every revelation. But it wasn't enough. He needed more. One afternoon, while Melissa was at her gym session, Aaron found himself standing in their bedroom, staring at her tablet. He knew her passcode. Her birthday, of course. His fingers hovered over the screen. This was it. The point of no return. If he did this, there was no going back. He entered the code. The tablet came to life, and Aaron began to dig. It didn't take long to find what he was looking for. Hidden folders, secret messaging apps, photos that made his stomach churn. Melissa and Chris, tangled together in various states of undress. Messages filled with declarations of love and passion, plans for rendezvous, thinly veiled as training sessions. And then, buried deep in her email archives, Aaron found something that made his blood run cold. Correspondence with a fertility clinic, dated back to before their first child was born. Discussions about sperm donors, IVF treatments, all hidden from him. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The children, his children, might not be his at all. Aaron sat heavily on the bed, the tablet clutched in his trembling hands. He'd known deep down since that day in the car. But seeing the evidence, stark and undeniable, was something else entirely. He allowed himself one moment of weakness, one choked sob, one anguished cry muffled into a pillow that still smelled faintly of Melissa's perfume. Then he straightened up, wiped his eyes, and got back to work. There were DNA tests to arrange, lawyers to consult, a life to unmake. As he left the bedroom, Aaron caught sight of a family photo on the wall. Melissa, himself, and the kids, all smiling brightly at the camera. Happy. Perfect. A lie. With careful precision, Aaron took down the photo and placed it face down in a drawer. It was time to face the truth, no matter how bitter it might be. Nature, it seemed, had a twisted sense of timing. Just as Aaron's world was crumbling around him, the earth itself decided to shake things up, literally. The earthquake hit on a Tuesday afternoon. Aaron was at his dental practice, his hand steady as he worked on a patient's molar. The first tremor was gentle, barely noticeable, but then the world seemed to tilt, and the floor beneath them began to roll like a ship on stormy seas. "Everyone out," Aaron shouted, helping his patient out of the chair. They stumbled toward the exit, dodging falling equipment and shattered glass. Outside, chaos reigned. Car alarms blared. People screamed, and in the distance, a building groaned ominously before collapsing in a cloud of dust. Aaron's first thought was of Melissa and the kids. He fumbled for his phone, dialing with shaking fingers. "Aaron." Melissa's voice was breathless, panicked. "Oh, thank God. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," he replied, surprised by how calm he sounded. "You and the kids." "We're okay. We're at home. The house is. There's some damage, but we're safe." Aaron closed his eyes, relief warring with the bitter knowledge of Melissa's betrayal. "Stay there. I'll be home as soon as I can." The drive home was a nightmare of cracked roads and downed power lines. Aaron's dental practice was in ruins, years of work and investment reduced to rubble. But as he navigated the chaos, a plan began to form in his mind. This disaster, this chaos, could be an opportunity, a chance to access information that had been out of reach. When he finally reached home, Melissa threw herself into his arms. Aaron held her, breathing in her familiar scent, hating himself for the comfort he still found in her embrace. The kids clung to his legs, tears streaking their dusty faces. Aaron knelt down, gathering them close. DNA test or no DNA test, these were his children. He loved them, no matter what. The next few days were a blur of insurance claims, structural assessments, and cleanup efforts. Aaron threw himself into the work, using the physical labor to exhaust himself into dreamless sleep each night. But even as he helped his neighbors and comforted his family, Aaron was plotting. The earthquake had shaken loose more than just buildings. It had created cracks in Melissa's carefully constructed facade, and Aaron was determined to exploit them. One evening, as Melissa was on the phone with their insurance company, Aaron slipped into her home office. The damage from the quake had knocked things askew, and in the chaos, Melissa had grown careless. There, in a drawer that was usually locked but now hung open, Aaron found a treasure trove of damning evidence. Bank statements for an account he'd never known about, correspondence with Chris about their plans for the future. And then, as if the universe itself was conspiring to reveal the truth, Aaron heard Melissa's voice drift in from the next room. "Chris, baby, we need to be patient," she was saying, her voice low and urgent. "Once the insurance money comes through, we'll have everything we need. We can leave this town, start over somewhere new. Just you and me." Aaron's hands clenched into fists, his nails digging crescents into his palms. The pain grounded him, kept him from storming into the room and confronting Melissa then and there. No, he had to be smart about this. He had to play the long game. As he carefully replaced the documents and slipped out of the office, Aaron's mind was racing. He had all the pieces now, all the evidence he needed to tear Melissa's world apart, just as she had destroyed his. But it wasn't enough to simply expose her lies. No, Aaron wanted more than that. He wanted Melissa and Chris to feel the full weight of their betrayal. He wanted them to lose everything, just as he had. As he walked down the hallway, past the family photos that now felt like monuments to a lie, Aaron made a decision. This wasn't just about divorce or revenge. This was war. And Dr. Aaron Foster, the mild-mannered dentist who had been a fool for love, was about to show the world just how dangerous he could be. Dr. Aaron Foster sat in the darkness of his home office, the blue glow of his computer screen casting eerie shadows across his face. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he stared at the newly created social media profile before him. Alexander Roth, venture capitalist, fitness enthusiast, looking to invest in promising local businesses. It was a lie, of course, a carefully crafted persona designed for one purpose: to ensnare Chris Parker, the man who had stolen his wife and shattered his world. Aaron's jaw clenched as he uploaded a stock photo of a distinguished-looking businessman. It was close enough to his own appearance to be believable if he ever needed to meet in person, but different enough to avoid immediate recognition. With a deep breath, he began to flesh out the profile. Harvard Business School, years of successful investments in tech startups, a recent interest in the health and fitness industry. Every detail was meticulously researched. Every claim just plausible enough to withstand cursory scrutiny. As he worked, Aaron's mind drifted to Melissa. Was she with Chris now? Were they laughing about how they'd fooled the idiot dentist for so long? The thought made his hands shake with rage. He forced himself to focus on the task at hand. There would be time for anger later. Now was the time for calm, calculated action. Finally satisfied with his creation, Aaron navigated to Chris Parker's business page for Flex Fitness. His mouse hovered over the message button for a moment before he clicked, a grim smile playing at his lips. "Mr. Parker," he typed, slipping into the persona of Alexander Roth with unsettling ease. "I've recently moved to the area, and I'm impressed by what I've seen of your gym franchise. I'm always on the lookout for promising investment opportunities in the fitness industry. Would you be interested in discussing the possibility of expansion?" Aaron hit send, then leaned back in his chair, his heart pounding. The bait was set. Now all he had to do was wait for Chris to take it. He didn't have to wait long. Within an hour, a reply popped up in his inbox. Aaron could almost taste the eagerness in Chris's response. "Mr. Roth, I'm thrilled by your interest. I've been looking for investors to help take Flex Fitness to the next level. When can we meet to discuss this exciting opportunity?" Aaron allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Chris was hook, line, and sinker. Now it was time to reel him in, slowly, carefully, until he was gasping and helpless on the shore. Over the next few weeks, Alexander Roth and Chris exchanged a flurry of messages. Aaron played his part perfectly, expressing increasing interest in Flex Fitness, while dangling the possibility of a multi-million-dollar investment. From his vantage point, as the unseen puppet master, Aaron watched as Chris's excitement grew. The gym owner began to talk about expansion plans, about franchising opportunities in neighboring states. He spoke of new equipment, celebrity endorsements, a whole empire built on the Flex Fitness brand. And through it all, Melissa became more and more involved. Aaron saw her name pop up in email chains, heard her voice in the background during video calls with Chris. She was all in on this plan, ready to ride Chris's coattails to a new life of luxury and freedom. It made Aaron sick, but he pushed down the nausea, channeled it into fuel for his revenge. As Alexander led Chris further down the primrose path, Aaron was setting another plan in motion. Late one night, using the secure anonymous email account, he sent a tip to the IRS. "To whom it may concern," he wrote, his fingers flying across the keyboard, "I have reason to believe that Chris Parker, owner of Flex Fitness, has been engaging in systematic tax evasion for years. Attached, please find documentation of suspicious financial activities." The documentation was a masterpiece of misdirection and half-truths, just enough real information to spark an investigation, mixed with carefully crafted falsehoods that would lead the IRS down a rabbit hole of Chris's finances. As he hit send, Aaron felt a twinge of guilt. This was more than just revenge. This was destruction, pure and simple. But then he remembered Melissa's words, slurred but crystal clear. "I've been cheating on you from the day we married." The guilt evaporated, replaced by cold, hard resolve. Chris Parker had taken everything from him. Now, Aaron was going to return the favor. Melissa Foster hummed to herself as she prepared dinner, a spring in her step that hadn't been there in years. Everything was falling into place. Chris's gym was on the verge of a major expansion, thanks to this mysterious investor. Soon, they'd have the money and the freedom to start a new life together. She felt a twinge of guilt as she heard Aaron's key in the lock. Poor, clueless Aaron. He'd been so supportive lately, even suggesting they invest some of their savings in a joint business venture. It almost made her regret what she was planning. Almost. "Honey, I'm home," Aaron called out, his voice warm and loving. Melissa plastered on a smile as he entered the kitchen. "Welcome back, dear. How was your day?" Aaron kissed her cheek, and Melissa fought the urge to pull away. "Busy, but good. How about you? Any exciting plans?" Melissa's heart raced. Did he suspect something? No. Impossible. Aaron was as oblivious as ever. "Oh, just the usual," she lied smoothly. "Might meet up with some friends later." Aaron nodded, his eyes unreadable. "Sounds nice. Oh, before I forget, I scheduled Chris for a dental checkup next week. Figured we could offer him a friends and family discount, given how much time you spend at his gym." Melissa nearly dropped the spoon she was holding. "Oh, that's thoughtful of you." Aaron shrugged, already turning away. "It's nothing. I'm going to grab a shower before dinner." As soon as Aaron was out of earshot, Melissa grabbed her phone and fired off a quick text to Chris. "Aaron scheduled you for a dental appointment. Be careful." Upstairs, in the sanctuary of the bathroom, Aaron allowed himself a small, grim smile as he watched Melissa's message pop up on Chris's phone. The spyware he'd installed was working perfectly. Everything was going according to plan. The next week, as Chris sat nervously in Aaron's dental chair, He had no idea that he was walking into a carefully laid trap. "Open wide," Aaron said cheerfully, snapping on a fresh pair of gloves. As he worked, he kept up a steady stream of banal chatter, lulling Chris into a false sense of security. It was almost too easy to swab the inside of Chris's cheek, the DNA sample secured without the other man ever realizing what had happened. Later that night, after Melissa had gone to bed, Aaron carefully packaged the sample and sent it off for testing. One more piece of evidence to add to his growing collection. But DNA wasn't the only thing Aaron was collecting. Over the next few weeks, he set up hidden cameras and microphones throughout the house. It made him sick to his stomach to watch the footage, to see Melissa and Chris in intimate moments in his own home. But he forced himself to review every second, cataloging every betrayal, every lie. And all the while, he played the role of the supportive, clueless husband to perfection. "I really think this business venture could be good for us," he told Melissa one evening, his voice earnest and excited. "We should put the house up as collateral. Show the bank we're serious." Melissa's eyes lit up, and Aaron had to fight to keep the disgust off his face. She was so eager to gamble their life together, not realizing that she had already lost everything. As Melissa agreed enthusiastically, already dreaming of the fortune she thought was coming her way, Aaron was setting the final pieces of his plan into motion. Anonymously, he sent packets of information to Chris's wife and business partners. Photos, text messages, financial records, irrefutable proof of the affair, and Chris's financial misdeeds. And then, in a move that would be the final nail in the coffin, Aaron began to manipulate their joint financial records. To anyone looking, it would appear that Melissa had been steadily embezzling funds for months, siphoning off money into her secret account. As he worked late into the night, meticulously falsifying records and creating a paper trail of Melissa's non-existent crimes, Aaron felt a cold satisfaction settle over him. The trap was set. All that was left was to spring it. The storm broke on a Tuesday. Chris Parker was in the middle of a training session when the IRS agents walked into his gym. He watched slack-jawed as they began to box up documents and computers. "What's going on?" he demanded. But the agents merely handed him a warrant and continued their work. Across town, Melissa was enjoying a leisurely lunch with friends when her phone buzzed. A text from Chris. "IRS at the gym. Everything frozen. Call you later." Her blood ran cold. This couldn't be happening. Not now, when they were so close to their dream. But the hits kept coming. By the time Melissa made it home, her world was in free fall. Chris's wife had gone public with the affair, plastering social media with evidence of their indiscretions. His business partners were distancing themselves, issuing statements about their shock and disappointment. And then came the final blow. "Melissa." Aaron's voice was calm, almost gentle, as he approached her in the kitchen. She turned to find him holding a stack of papers. Divorce papers, she realized with a jolt. "Aaron, I can explain." But Aaron held up a hand, silencing her. "Save it, Melissa. I know everything. The affair, the embezzlement, the kids. How long did you think you could keep it all hidden?" Melissa felt the floor drop out from under her. How? How could he possibly know? As if reading her mind, Aaron continued. "Did you really think I was that stupid? That I wouldn't notice the missing money? The late nights? The lies? I've known for months, Melissa. I was just waiting for the right moment." Melissa's mind raced. The joint business venture, Aaron's sudden interest in their finances. It had all been a setup. She had walked right into his trap. The kids, she whispered, a last desperate attempt to salvage something. They're innocent in all this. You wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Aaron's voice was ice. Abandon them. Like you were planning to do. Don't worry, Melissa. I'm not like you. I love those kids, even if they're not biologically mine. But make no mistake, you won't be seeing them again. Melissa collapsed into a chair, her world crumbling around her. In the space of a few hours, she had lost everything. Her lover, her children, her future. And as she looked up at Aaron, seeing the cold, implacable resolve in his eyes, she realized she had underestimated him all along. This wasn't the meek, trusting fool she had thought she married. This was a man who had systematically dismantled her entire life. As Aaron laid out the terms of their divorce, his voice dispassionate, as if discussing a business transaction, Melissa felt a chill run down her spine. She had thought she was the clever one, playing Aaron for a fool all these years. But in the end, she had been the biggest fool of all. The conference room at James and Ann Hartley law offices felt more like a gladiatorial arena than a place of business. Aaron Foster sat at one end of the long mahogany table, his posture relaxed, almost bored. Across from him, Melissa and Chris fidgeted in their seats, exchanging nervous glances. Aaron's lawyer, a shark in an expensive suit named Michael Hartley, stood by the window, deliberately ignoring the tension in the room. This was Aaron's show, and he knew it. "Thank you both for coming," Aaron began, his voice calm and measured. "I thought it would be best if we discussed the terms of the divorce settlement face to face." Melissa's eyes narrowed. "Terms? Aaron, be reasonable. You can't possibly think." "Oh, I think a great many things, Melissa." Aaron cut her off, a hint of steel entering his tone. "For instance, I think it's time we put all our cards on the table, don't you?" With deliberate slowness, Aaron reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. He opened it, spreading photos and documents across the table like a dealer at a high-stakes poker game. "What is this?" Chris demanded, leaning forward to get a better look. His face paled as he recognized himself in some of the photos. Intimate moments with Melissa, clandestine meetings, exchanges of money. "This," Aaron said, his voice dripping with false concern, "is what we in the business world call leverage. You see, I've been quite busy these past few months. While you two were planning your grand escape, I was, shall we say, documenting your indiscretions." Melissa's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. "You knew? All this time?" Aaron's laugh was cold, devoid of humor. "Oh, Melissa, I knew everything. Your affair, your plans to leave, the truth about the children's parentage. Did you really think I was that stupid?" Chris slammed his fist on the table. "This is blackmail. You can't." "I can, and I have," Aaron interrupted smoothly. "But this is just the appetizer. Would you like to see the main course?" He pressed a button on a remote, and the large screen on the wall flickered to life. Security camera footage began to play. Melissa and Chris in various compromising positions, discussing their plans, laughing about how they were fooling Aaron. "You bugged our house," Melissa whispered, horrified. "Our house?" Aaron's voice was razor sharp. "You mean the house you were planning to sell out from under me? The home you shared with our children? Sorry, your children, while carrying on your sordid affair." "Yes, Melissa. I bugged our house." Chris stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is insane. We're leaving. Come on, Melissa." Aaron's smile was predatory. "Oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you, Chris. You see, the authorities are very interested in some of the information I've uncovered. Tax evasion, fraud, misuse of client funds. It would be a shame if all that evidence found its way to the IRS and the police, wouldn't it?" The color drained from Chris's face as he slowly sank back into his chair. Melissa looked between the two men, her world crumbling around her. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Aaron leaned back in his chair, the picture of relaxed confidence. "What do I want? I want justice, Melissa. I want you both to understand the full extent of what you've done. To me, to our family, to everyone who trusted you." He turned to his lawyer. "Michael, would you mind giving us the room for a few minutes? I think it's time for a frank discussion between old friends." As the lawyer left, closing the door behind him, Aaron's demeanor changed. The mask of civility dropped, revealing the raw pain and anger beneath. "Did you ever love me, Melissa? Was any of it real?" Melissa flinched at the question. "I thought I did. Once. in the beginning. But then you got bored, Aaron finished for her. And instead of being an adult and ending things, you decided to string me along for years, to bear children that weren't mine, and let me raise them as my own, to plan your escape while smiling to my face every day. Chris, sensing an opening, tried to interject. Look, man, we never meet. Shut up. Aaron's voice was like a whip crack. You don't get to speak. You're just a symptom of the disease, Chris. A parasite who latched onto a vulnerable woman and exploited her for your own gain. He turned back to Melissa. I want you to understand something. All of this, it's not just about the affair. It's about the years of lies, the manipulation, the way you were willing to destroy our family, to uproot our children's lives, all for your own selfish desires. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. Aaron, please. We can work this out. For the kids. The kids. Aaron's laugh was bitter. You mean the children you were ready to abandon? The ones you lied to me about for years? No, Melissa. You don't get to use them as a bargaining chip now. He stood up, looming over the table. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign these divorce papers. You're going to agree to my terms, which, believe me, are far more generous than you deserve. And then you're going to leave. Both of you. You're going to walk out of here and out of my life. Chris, his bravado long gone, spoke up in a shaky voice. And if we don't? Aaron's smile was chilling. Then I release everything. Every sordid detail. Every financial transgression. Every lie you've ever told. I burn your lives to the ground and salt the earth behind me. It's your choice. The room was silent for a long moment, the weight of Aaron's words hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Melissa reached for the pen, her hand trembling. As she signed the papers, she looked up at Aaron one last time. I truly am sorry, Aaron, for everything. Aaron's face was impassive as he took the signed documents. No, Melissa, you're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. He gathered his things and moved towards the door. As he reached for the handle, he turned back one last time. Oh, and Chris, I'd start looking for a good criminal defense lawyer if I were you. I hear the IRS is very interested in your financial records. With that, Aaron walked out, leaving Melissa and Chris to face the wreckage of their lives. The whispers followed Melissa through the grocery store aisles, a constant hum of judgment and scorn. She kept her head down, trying to ignore the stares, the not-so-subtle pointing. Did you hear? One voice carried over the others. She cheated on Dr. Foster for years, with that gym trainer no less. And the children aren't even his. Another voice chimed in. Can you imagine? Melissa's hand shook as she reached for a box of cereal, the same brand she'd bought for years, back when she was still Mrs. Foster, respected, and part of the community. Now, it felt like a relic from another life. She had tried to hold her head high in the weeks following the divorce, to brazen it out, but Aaron's influence ran deep in their small town. Slowly but surely, doors began to close. Invitations dried up. Even her closest friends started to distance themselves, not wanting to be tainted by association. Chris wasn't faring any better. The last Melissa had heard, all his gym franchises were being sold off to cover his mounting legal fees. The IRS investigation had opened Pandora's box of financial misdeeds, and now he was fighting just to stay out of prison. As for their grand plans of starting a new life together, they had crumbled to dust in the harsh light of reality. Chris had become bitter and angry, lashing out at Melissa as if she were to blame for all his troubles. Their passionate affair had devolved into a toxic codependence, both of them clinging to the wreckage of their former lives. Melissa finished her shopping and headed to her car, a far cry from the luxury SUV she once drove. As she loaded the groceries, a familiar voice called out, "Mom." She turned to see her children. No, Aaron's children. She reminded herself bitterly, running toward her. Aaron stood a short distance away, watching carefully. "Hey, sweethearts." Melissa forced a smile, kneeling down to hug them. Are you having fun with your dad? The older child, Emily, nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, we're going to the zoo today. Dad says we can see the new tiger cubs. Melissa's heart clenched. She had been the one to promise that zoo trip months ago, before everything fell apart. That's wonderful, honey. You'll have to tell me all about it next time I see you. As the children chatted excitedly, Melissa looked up to meet Aaron's gaze. His face was impassive, but she could see the mix of emotions in his eyes: pain, anger, and a fierce protectiveness as he looked at the kids. He had kept his word. Despite everything, he had maintained a relationship with the children, never letting on that he wasn't their biological father. It was a kindness Melissa knew she didn't deserve. All right, kids, Aaron called out. Say goodbye to your mother. We need to get going if we want to beat the crowds at the zoo. The children hugged Melissa one last time before running back to Aaron. As they walked away, Melissa heard Emily ask, Dad, why doesn't Mom come with us anymore? Aaron's response was too quiet for Melissa to hear, but she saw him kneel down, speaking gently to the children. Always a protector, even now. Melissa got into her car, tears streaming down her face. This was her new reality, watching from the sidelines as life went on without her. Later that night, after tucking the children into bed, Aaron sat at his computer, his finger hovering over the send button. On the screen was an email, carefully worded and anonymized, addressed to two men he had never met, but whose DNA ran in the veins of the children he had raised as his own. You have a right to know. The email read, followed by details about the children, their ages, their names, and the circumstances of their conception. Aaron took a deep breath and clicked send. It was done. He had fulfilled what he saw as his final moral obligation to these innocent lives caught in the crossfire of adult betrayals. As he closed his laptop, Aaron allowed himself a moment of reflection. His time with the children was coming to an end, but he was determined to make their remaining days together count. Every bedtime story, every trip to the park, every shared laugh. These were the memories he would carry with him into his new life. It was a bittersweet realization, but Aaron knew it was necessary, a clean break for all of them. The children would have a chance to know their biological fathers, and he would have the opportunity to truly start anew, unburdened by the constant reminders of Melissa's betrayal. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the empty rooms of the Foster family home. Aaron stood in the doorway of what had once been the master bedroom, a cardboard box in his arms, the last of his belongings, ready to be loaded into the moving truck idling in the driveway. He had sold the house weeks ago, another step in severing his ties to this town, and the life he had built here. The new owners would be moving in tomorrow, a young couple starting their own family. Aaron hoped they'd be happier here than he had been. As he made his way downstairs, his footsteps echoing in the empty space, Aaron paused by the kitchen counter. A single envelope lay there, his last piece of unfinished business. With a deep breath, he set down the box and picked up the envelope. Melissa was written on the front in his neat, precise handwriting. He debated long and hard about whether to leave this note, whether Melissa deserved even this small courtesy. But in the end, he had decided it was necessary, not for her, but for him, a final act of closure before he left this chapter of his life behind for good. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper. On it, words that encompassed all his pain, his anger, and his final goodbye. Melissa, your ex-lover knows about the kids. Good luck dealing with that mess. I'm leaving this town forever. Goodbye. Aaron placed the envelope back on the counter, positioned so it would be impossible to miss. Then he picked up his box and walked out the front door for the last time. The moving truck was packed and ready to go. Aaron's new life awaited him in a city hundreds of miles away. A new dental practice, bought with the proceeds from the sale of his old one, and the favorable divorce settlement. A fresh start, unburdened by the weight of betrayal and lies. As he climbed into the driver's seat, Aaron allowed himself one last look at the house. So many memories, good and bad. The life he thought he'd have. The future he'd planned. All gone now, washed away by Melissa's infidelity and his own calculated revenge. For a moment, doubt crept in. Had he gone too far? The devastation he'd wreaked on Melissa and Chris's lives was complete. They had lost everything. Their reputations, their livelihoods, their futures. Even the children, whom Aaron had grown to love despite their lack of biological connection, would suffer from the fallout. But then Aaron remembered the cold, cruel words Melissa had spoken that day in the car. The years of lies, the betrayal, the way she had been prepared to abandon everything to tear apart their family for her own selfish desires. No, Aaron decided. He hadn't gone too far. He had simply given Melissa and Chris a taste of the destruction they had been prepared to visit upon him. An eye for an eye, a life for a life. With a nod of finality, Aaron started the engine. As he pulled away from the curb, he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure at the end of the street, Melissa, standing there watching, her face a mask of regret and loss. Aaron didn't slow down. He drove past without a second glance, his eyes fixed firmly on the road ahead, on his future. The town fell away behind him, growing smaller in his rearview mirror until it disappeared altogether. With each mile that passed, Aaron felt the weight lifting from his shoulders. The anger, the pain, the thirst for vengeance. All of it faded, replaced by a sense of calm purpose. He was Dr. Aaron Foster, and he was starting over. His past was behind him, a cautionary tale and a hard-learned lesson. But his future, that was still unwritten, full of possibilities. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Aaron allowed himself a small smile. For the first time in years, he felt truly free. The road stretched out before him, long and winding, leading to a new life and new adventures. And somewhere deep inside, in a place he had almost forgotten existed, Aaron felt a stirring of hope. Not for reconciliation or forgiveness. Those bridges were well and truly burned, but hope for something new, something better. The moving truck ate up the miles, carrying Aaron toward his fresh start. And as the familiar landmarks of his old life faded into the distance, so too did the last vestiges of the man he used to be. Dr. Aaron Foster was gone. In his place was a man tempered by betrayal, hardened by revenge, but ultimately freed by the very acts that had nearly destroyed him. The future was waiting, and this time, Aaron was ready to meet it on his own terms. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.